Hi everyone, let's continue systematic literature review. This is the paper, a guide to conducting a standalone systematic literature review. Most of the time, why we are doing literature review and what is the relevance of literature review. So, well explained by this author, you can see uh, guide to conducting a standalone systematic literature review. And here is a proper flow chart has been given how we can conduct systematic literature review. And now you can see literature review guides for information system research that is specifically related to information system. But it is well explained in this paper. You can see when a systematic literature review might be useful and when it might not. So, a detailed methodological approach is necessary in any kind of literature review. I distinguish between three general kinds of literature review. Category one is theoretical background, when a person who is writing, who is giving supporting document as a literature review. Let's say theoretical foundation and context of a research question and helps to bring the question into focus. And that is most commonly labeled literature review, or we can call it theoretical background or something similar. But second category, literature review as a chapter of a graduate thesis, when a person is giving literature review as a chapter in a thesis. So I designate this as a thesis literature review. But the third category, that is standalone literature review, a journal length paper that reviews the literature in a field without the authors collecting or analyzing any primary data, that is new or original. That means it is a standalone literature review. So, what is the motivation behind this? Actually, conducting a systematic standalone literature review exists. They can be undertaken to describe available knowledge for professional practice to identify effective research projects and techniques. They could find out, but how we can conduct here is this is the very important topic is here, a case for rigor in literature review. Standalone literature reviews can and are conducted with varying standards of rigor that range from little more than an annotated bibliography to scientifically rigorous synthesis of a body of primary research. Next, we come to the next section. Here is well defined an eight-step guide to conducting a systematic literature review one by one. Number one is identify the purpose. Number two, here is draft protocol and train the teams. Further is apply practical screen. That is the third step. And further is search for literature, then extract data. Then here is price quality, synthesize studies and write the review. That would be the final step. So in this paper, a well-defined each step has given a well-defined explanation. So examples of model literature review in information system that is related to this is the flow diagram, how we have to conduct systematic literature review. You can see identify the first is this phase is planning. Identify the purpose and draft protocol and train the team. Explicit, comprehensive, reproducible. And here is second category that is selection. Apply practical screen and search for literature. Here is explicit, comprehensive. Extraction, you can see at this fifth stage extraction data, whether it is qualitative or qualitative, right? Qualitative and qualitative. Here is appraise quality, qualitative and quantitative, that is explicit. Further is synthesized studies, execution, whether is quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method, quantitative as well as qualitative, explicit, reproducive, and write the review. And finally, this we are writing this review, write the review. That is systematic guide to literature review development. And this is the one of the example literature review practices in 23 exemplar reviews from IS and management. So how they have conducted synthesis type, qualitative, both qualitative and all, step one, step two, step eight, all those things they had taken into consideration. Further is our note on terminology systematic as a qualitative rather than a classify adjective. Here is systematic review to refer to a different type of literature review from what they call a traditional or conventional literature review. So, author consider the systematic literature review to be a qualitative adjective. Right? A qualitative adjective is one that describes the nature of a thing in a way that can be qualified by greater or less. So here is as explained earlier, identify the purpose in the flow diagram, determination of dissemination targets. Further is guides and exemplars of defining the literature review's purpose. What is the behind this purpose? And here is you can see eight steps that every paper followed. So, author said number one, to analyze the progress of a specific research stream. Number two, to make recommendations for future research. Number three, to review the application of one theoretical model in the IS literature. I mean, this one is the information system literature. To review the application of one methodological approach in the IS literature to develop a model or framework and to answer our specific research questions. So draft protocol and train the team. Those are doing the systematic literature review, drafting the research question. Here is drafting the protocol. So protocol would be work as a roadmap towards its answer. Further is training the reviewers, right? And note taking techniques, reviewing techniques, and further guides and exemplars of protocols and reviewer training. Apply practical screen. Criteria for the practical screen, right? Here is content, topics or variables, then publication language. Further is journals and authors, then setting, right? Setting means here is what you're doing. Review might consider the only those studies conducted in certain settings such as healthcare institution or the financial service industry. So in that way, then participants or subjects, further is program or intervention, and research design or sampling methodology, date of publication, data collection or duration of data collection, then the sources of financial support. Further is practical tips for the practical screen, then the guides and exemplars of the practical screen, search for literature. Here is then further is we can come to the guides and exemplars of searching the literature and how we can extract the data. That's the most important step. Guides and exemplars of data extraction, how we can extract the data. Then here is the appraised quality. Once all potentially eligible papers have been collected, reviewers should then examine the papers more closely to evaluate their quality. Not all primary studies are of equal quality, so thus reviewers need to rate studies according to the extent to which they meet various quality standards. Means one, two, three, you can do ranking. Then after that, quality appraisal here is quantitative, and that means hierarchy of evidence, a ranking of research design in a order of their results, relative generalization and validity. So here is we are doing numbering, that means ranking. So studies that measure effectiveness with randomized control, studies that use quasi-experimental design and uncontrolled studies, studies that assess. Here is etiological relationships, and further is here's cohort studies. Further is we can come to quality appraisal, qualitative, and further is then move to the guides and exemplars of quality appraisal. And in the next section, synthesize studies. Then the this one is the qualitative synthesis of quantitative studies, that is known as meta-analysis. Number of times research scholars ask, and what do you mean by term meta-analysis? So meta-analysis is well defined, right? Here is quantitative synthesis of this one is of quantitative studies, that is known as meta-analysis. We can say here is the well-defined. When each of these cases is quantitatively analyzed to derive a composite result, such a synthesis is called meta-analysis. Here is in this section you can see meta-analysis. Here is uh, a quantitative synthesis of a reviewed studies involve considering each study as a case that has certain independent variables that are hypothesized to have an effect or non-effect on a given dependent variable. So when each of these cases, individual studies, is quantitatively analyzed to derive a composite result, such kind of synthesis is known as meta-analysis. Then further we can move to the next section is qualitative synthesis of quantitative or qualitative studies. It's a well-defined combined synthesis of quantitative and qualitative studies and guide and exemplars of synthesis. Further, we can move on, write the review, and finally, you are writing in this final stage, developing a research literature review in reporting the findings and actually writing the review. Though it should be clear by now how time and energy intensive this process can be, assuming all the previous steps have been followed in order. Then further is we can come to the, later on, there are two aspects authors said. Rigorous systematic review has two important aspects. One is it clearly documents the steps followed and make a valuable scholarly contribution. Otherwise, people will ask you what is your contribution. So here is first you will review the past studies and after that you will contribute something. You can contribute how your contribution is, then people go for further research. So guides and exemplars for writing a literature review. Then is thoughts on publishability of systematic literature review, publishing the protocol. That's important because protocol is ideal for being presented at a conference. Actually, the primary reason for presenting a review protocol at a conference is to obtain external validation by the peer reviewers, because number of people they will validate and they will give some significant suggestions. Systematic literature review as a part of doctoral dissertation. That is the next part. And standalone systematic literature review as the initiation to a search program. And finally, author has written conclusion and well detailed this particular manuscript. So he said, while I describe each step in fair detail, it is impossible to elaborate on all the particular necessary to create a literature review in one paper. Yes, that's true. And I hope this paper I will give you in description box also link of this paper, and this paper is easily free of cost, that is available on Google Scholar. So you can download this paper and you must refer this paper because it's important paper in systematic literature review point of view, and you can give this flow diagram also, you can mention this flow diagram in your studies. So I hope this video would be helpful to you. So keep watching and stay tuned.